what was great is, especially on SWAT, and I hopefully this is something that your listeners can take too. When I approached a house, and the reason SWAT was called was because it hit a higher level of threat. We did what other agents did. We had some better tools. We had a lot more training, but we were called because the threat was deemed higher than just a normal agent arrest. And yet, because of my constant training, here I am in firearms, and I can shoot. I know I'm going to hit my target. I know I am. I'm consistent, and I'm seeing the guys next to me, and I wasn't the best. So these guys are even better. And I'm going through tactics, the footwork, and I'm seeing guys move without words, covering exposed areas to danger. And it almost gives you goosebumps. And you're hitting that flow where now we go to a house, and here's a violent felon, and we're ready to hit it. And because I'm confident in my competence, and I've seen my partners, and they're at least as good as I am, there's no buzzing in the back of my head that says, Eric, you might die.
Mm.
It's just focus. I'm not afraid. I just have to think, what's my task? And do I have the tools necessary to complete it? And that forward look without, being hesitant at all, that's how I felt. And I watched everyone else the same way. Nobody hesitating, but controlled and able. And it was because I knew I was good. And I knew I was good because we had practiced it.
Yeah.
And you hit that flow because I'm doing things that I'm good at against the pressure. And in this case, the pressure was possible death. And that gets you into a real ecstatic place as well. So if you said, hey, Eric, can you come speak to 1,000 people on how the FBI carries out an investigation? I'm at peace. I'm calm. It's fine. If you say, hey, Eric, I want you next week to come speak about how to play piano. Well, now I'm stressed because I don't know how to do that. I'm not competent there. The other things, I am a genius in because the FBI gave me the training to be there.
Yeah. That's the reps. Doesn't matter what it is. The reps are everything. Whether you're shooting a basketball or you're about to break down a door, the reps. Or again, I say somewhat tongue in cheek to entrepreneurs. You think that's a big problem, right? What you have is not a big problem. I only know that because I've dealt with that problem, and I promise you, it's not as big a problem as you think it is. But I thought it was a big problem when I encountered it the first time. So, perspective is a big part of that. From an entrepreneur perspective, on your side, as I alluded to in my intro, I think that being able to read people or understand people is a huge talent. And I've had 10,000 employees in my life. I think I'm a pretty good judge of character. And I'm constantly telling people that instincts matter in this context. But you said something interesting. When you're in the room with one of these animals that is preying on children, you're not emotional.
Yeah.
You're calm, right?
Yeah.
You're blank faced. And I say there's no money in emotion. You can be passionate about your business, but when it comes to make decisions, there's no emotion, right? These ideas that the motorcycle builder on television, and they're screaming and yelling and throwing wrenches at each other, and the camera follows them out the door and the door gets slammed, or the restaurant owner and the chef is throwing food on the ground and no one can eat this and all of that. That's not how the real world works. That's not how success works. And so in that context, being calm and reading people and trying to understand what you're hiring and what you're selling to is another, I don't know, arrow in the quiver, so to speak. It's not the only one, but it's one of many. In your context, then, what would you add to that? Having dealt with really where you're reading people and or recruiting people, right, to work for you, informant-wise, things of that nature. What's your take on that?
So here's the thing, Jerry. When I went to the FBI Academy, I'd never handled a gun before. I had no experience in law enforcement, military, anything like that. I'm a pretty smart guy, so I can keep up with what we're doing, and I'm learning along the way. But I had classmates who are here, and I'm here, and then we're both getting better until we graduate. And then as soon as we got into the field, now I was here because I had spent 12 years prior learning how to connect with people. So no matter what technology the FBI has, guns, judicial process, eventually you're dealing with people, with informants, with victims, with witnesses, with the criminals. And so having that experience of talking to someone and not having the answers, but listening first. So that's going to be curiosity. So when you come to me and say, "Hey, Pastor, I think I've done something wrong," if I just go, "Yeah, here's some Bible verses that apply to that. I hope those work. See you later."
Right.
That's the last time we're talking. You're like, that guy's
Right.
useless.
Right.
But now if I dig into you and say, how does that, how do you feel about that? What do you think you can, like, no, we're working together. That was something that I had practiced many times with people, of listening instead of speaking. The church that we established was one without judgment. So we wanted people to come. I told my folks, if we make a mistake, we're going to err on the side of grace. So I'm going to let God judge us for being too welcoming. I'll live with that. And so now I brought that into the criminal world, where uh, this is the crazy situation. So if I had no judgment in how we met, when I'm interrogating you, your mind tricks you because stupidly you think this is most important. What's going on right now is most important. So I'm not going to judge you. I'll save that for court, and you're going to get judged harsher because you're going to confess things to me. But as I come to the criminals and I speak to them kindly and professionally, I find ways to connect with them, to find, even with the pedophiles, even with the sex offenders. I had one guy, 30-some-year-old guy, who had visited a 13-year-old boy and had digitally raped him on a number of occasions, and then oral sex too. And the 13-year-old boy actually looked like he was 10 on top of that. So here I am. I'm interviewing the guy, and he tells me that he loved the boy. And so that's terrible. He doesn't understand what love is, but I get what that emotion is. I know what it's like to love someone. So I'm going to hook onto that, and I'm going to use that because I know that experience, and we can talk about that. And coincidentally, talking about that is going to get you more prison time, because now I'm going to seal up this case. So yeah, the reading people is all in the language that they give, not in the, facial tics or the, up and to the right or whatever they do with their eyes. It is just listening for the cues that people give in their language, because people want to tell the truth. And so if they're trying to lie, those truths will smell just a little off. And so you have to have that perception of, that's not exactly what I was asking, because what you said was true, but you're trying to use that to get away with a lie.
Two things there that I think are really critical that you just said that I want people to hear. I'll go with the second one first, which is the normal person standing there talking to this guy who's telling you he's in love with the 13-year-old boy would want to just take him in the ground and stomp his face into the ground. The normal, anyone with any kind of normal reaction. And I think this is a terrible example, but it's a perfect example of, I have taught forever to stay calm. Change today what we changed yesterday. Change tomorrow what we changed today. Don't be wedded to anything. You have to be unemotional about these things. That's how you can see all of the problems. And you're telling me that in these extreme situations, right, where emotions could be running very, very high, you're doing your job at the best you can by staying calm, right? And doing, this is my second point, listening, not hearing, but listening.
I'm actively looking for something.
Yeah.
Trying to grab onto what they're saying to say, let me use that.
Yeah. Yes. And again, as men, I made a video for a guy yesterday talking about this same thing, where I was like, yeah, you don't listen. You cut somebody off before you allow them to finish. So that means you didn't even hear what they had to say, period, because you're so sure you know what the answer is. But he said, no, I heard what you said. I said, no, I didn't say hear, right? I said, listen. It's a very big difference between listening and hearing. And in your context, you're trying to get the child rapist, years in jail. We're just trying to make a sale. We're just trying to avoid a problem with an employee, whatever it might be. But I think the actions and the behavior are beneficial in both cases. That is to listen. And then you have to be in a frame of mind, regardless of the world burning down around you or the need to stomp the child rapist in the head. You got to be calm, cool, and collected so you can actually use what you're listening to him say.
Right. So what's my goal in this? My goal is to get him to confess, because that will seal this up and he'll go to prison for the longest time that we can get. We'll have the hammer over him. So that's my goal. Coming in and yelling at him, okay, well, I'm not getting to my goal then. Stomping his head, I'm not getting that goal because now the case is thrown out or what. So I can focus on ahead of time in a cool moment. This is my goal. Now, when the guy starts saying things that are disreputable, disgusting, okay, I'm going to stick to my goal, which is we're going to get the most time possible for you. And when I have come to this criminal's house and I've taken 10 buddies with me and we tear down their door and I put you in handcuffs and I tell you I'm going to take you to prison, is there anything else I need to do to show you I'm in charge?
Yeah.
Because I am. And so now, because I am in charge and everyone knows this, I don't have to act that way. I don't have to act abusive, aggressive when we meet, because if you don't know I'm in charge, you're an idiot and we're going to have problems with our interrogation. Yeah. But every piece of evidence shows I am in control. So I'm going to bring myself down, condescend, and we'll just have a normal conversation that's calm. You're experiencing probably the worst day of your life right now, and I'm here to help you. I'm gonna bring you through this because I've done this hundreds of times. Let me help you understand what you're going through, what's going to come next, and what you can experience. And so many times bringing these criminals out of that hyper state of fear and calming them, well, now they owe me. Like they feel better because I've done this for them. Right. I've helped calm them. And again, this moment is more important than the future for them. This matters most. In the back of their head, they're thinking this is going to go to trial someday, but I have to ease the conflict right now of how I feel. And having been there, I'm going to take advantage of that.
Yeah, and certainly that's in the extreme situation, and I think entrepreneurs can learn something from that. My mother said, best piece of advice my mother ever gave me, I was 14, 15 years old, and she said, you're the rock that everyone crashes. I'm child number 7. And for some reason, she said, you're the rock that everyone crashes against. And throughout my career, with so many employees dealing with these hyper-pressurized situations, the employees are going to come to you, and you either react, right? Or you do everything you can to what you just described so well in such an extreme situation. But it's the same principles as you bring everything down, give everybody comfort, make everybody feel, okay, that dude's in charge. It's going to be okay. Now, what do we do next?
Absolutely. I went through that with my wife just this morning as she was saying, I'm having difficulty with an employee. And I'm talking it through with her. I said, okay. I want to ask this and do that. And I said, how about if you start with curiosity? And so I'm calm because this doesn't affect me and I can help her through this. Yeah. Why don't you start with curiosity? And she says, yeah, I'll ask, why would you do that? And I go, that's not curious. That's not curious. Like I said, you don't know. Maybe they're having mental health issues. Maybe they're having difficulties. Like actually be open, like actually want to know. You can state, this made me upset when you did that. Okay. But this is how you're going to learn, and be soft with them and get all the facts first. And curiosity gets the facts. Curiosity is what gets, hey, now you're telling me what I need to know to do a better job interacting with you.
Yeah, that's great. That's I love that. I've always said, I'll just tell you a really quick story for whatever it's worth. Everything is my fault. When I was 14 years old, I got robbed, taking money out of an ATM. They put a good beating to me, rolled me underneath of a bus stop, August in Portland, Oregon. I woke up a couple hours later, couple of buses to get home. There's a square in Portland, in Northeast Portland. It's an oversized in the sidewalk. And as I hit that square, a voice outside my head, I was all broken nose, 2 ribs broken, both eyes are black and bleeding down my front. And this voice, again, I'm delirious, said to me, everything is your fault. I'm poor white trash. I'm, my first job as an 11-year-old, you're poor white trash. It said, everything is your fault. Well, I'm telling you, Eric, that stuck with me. If you keep like you're doing, you're going to be like everybody else and no one's going to help you. I don't know where that came from. I didn't have a pastor. I didn't have a counselor. I don't know where it came from. I didn't hockey stick right out of it. My life became fantastic. I had to go through a lot of turmoil, but it stayed with me that everything is your fault. And as an entrepreneur, I approached employees that everything was my fault. If you lost me, I had an employee lose me $100,000, $126,000 one time. And what did I do to put that person in that position to lose me that money and then work backwards from there? I don't hate the person. I hate whatever I did that didn't allow myself to be in front of that problem. And I really found that to be a huge help in dealing with employees in particular.
And was that accountability that you showed then contagious as it set the morale?
100%.
So in SWAT, we have after action reviews. So we hit a house, we do an operation, we return to base, and we talk about what do we do well, how do we screw up, what mistakes, what do we keep, what do we take away. And no one ever would call out someone else because that person was we'd shut the door getting ready, and one guy would go, hey, before we even start, I realize I definitely did this. And that had been established through generations and years that you're not safe if you can't take ownership of what you've done wrong.
Yeah.
And I want to feel comfortable with you. And so guys never called out because they were always first to say, that was my fault, and here's what I did, and here's how I need to change. And so you get that ownership. That's just now it's like a badge of honor to say, right here, that was me.
Yeah,
I screwed up.
It's a superpower.
Yeah,
it really is a superpower.